Hey, we are live. Welcome everybody to another live stream of cannot help but do this little jig every time that thing plays. It's just like, and it gets stuck in my head like the rest of the night.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
It's a good one. It's a good one. Welcome everybody. We are live once again, and we have a very special guest tonight, Evan Carothers, the creator writer of TOXX with 2 X's. He is currently kickstarting the first trade paperback volume #1, which collects issues 1 through 5. Was there a 0 issue of TOXX, or is it just?
There was
1
not.
through 5?
No,
there was
just
not, but
1
there
through 5.
was. So he is also the creator of a comic. This is where I discovered him, of the Ignis Quadrant, which is a sci-fi comic that I know I jumped on board. Right, I double-checked this. I went back to things I had pledged for in the past. It was straight from the beginning with issues 0 and 1. So been there from the beginning, and that is definitely the nearest and dearest to my heart when it comes to you. But I've also you are the creator of TOXX. This was my reading TOXX to prepare for this live stream. That was the first time I'd taken a deep dive into that series. I don't know why, because I was such a fan of the Ignis Quadrant, and yet this one slipped under my radar for, I think, long enough that by the time you were on issue 4, I think it was because before this campaign, issue 4 was the previous one. And that was the first one where I was like, what's TOXX? And I looked at it, but for some reason I missed issues 1 through 3. I couldn't tell you why, but somehow I missed it. But I did also pledge for your Mixology Noir double feature one shot, which, let me tell you, do you have... So Mixology Noir, just to go into this in brief, broad strokes before we get to the meat of the matter, which is TOXX, and of course, Evan as a creator. But Mixology Noir was this double feature, 2 stories collected into one 70+ page one-shot graphic novel, whatever you want to call it at that page count. It's kind of, taster's choice, what you want to call that. But each story was based on a drink. And so you had Sazerac and Vesper, I believe, for that first one.
Right.
And that is something, if you're going to do another one, that is one we have got to have you back on the show. We've got to do the mix.
Oh, I already have. I have a whole nother Mixology Noir #2 completely finished, just waiting to Kickstarter right now.
Really?
Perfect.
Oh, wow.
We didn't have this show really up and running for the first one, so it's like we missed that chance. It was already something we were starting on, but we just weren't ready to have guests on. We weren't ready to. We just weren't nimble enough yet. But when I saw that mixology, I was like, oh, this has to be featured one of these days because it's perfect. And of course, we're going to all have to go get the drinks that those stories are based on, and I'll be sipping that when we're talking about that on the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, but Ignis Quadrant, that was the first one, which, I was even one of the assholes who followed you over to Indiegogo when you did one issue over there.
I had to try it one time.
Right. And then you're like, nope, and came right back to Kickstarter.
It was before Indiegogo had any negative connotations. It was just another alternative.
Right,
and I'd done so many Kickstarters for my tabletop gaming stuff, which is another part of my business. I'm like, I got to try Indiegogo one time to see if it's different. And it is drastically different.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
and of course, Blake from Blake's Buzz. Blake's Buzz is with us today. I need a pour spout like that for whiskey. Yes, you do.
Indeed.
Yeah.
All right. Welcome,
the Venturi, Blake. It oxidizes the wine while you pour it.
Yes.
Fills it out.
Yes.
That's right.
And help spillage too. It's a much neater way of pouring wine when you have one of those things.
It depends. Sometimes if you've had a little bit to drink, you don't get it out all the way, and then you get more spillage.
Exactly.
That's probably true. All right. So, Evan, you started. So, was Ignis Quadrant your very first comic book that you actually created or published? Let me put out to the public. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I did a bunch of. It's not the same, but I did a lot of tabletop gaming supplements and things that had art and story and stuff, which is kind of how I got into comics from an interest standpoint. But the Ignis Quadrant, which was actually a spinoff of some of my tabletop gaming stuff, was my first comic.
Cool. And so the tabletop gaming, and you have your own business with is it tabletops or is it 3D models or 3D models and tabletop gaming?
It's all of the above. I mean, I do accessories like neoprene gaming mats, and then like some board games. I got a deck of cards I'm working on, supplements, but the bulk of it is 3D models designed for at-home 3D printing for like proxies for little miniatures, scenery, spaceships, like everything like that.
Very cool. And was that your first passion, like gaming and tabletops and things like that? And then you found your way, kind of segued into comics. Obviously, there's probably a part of you that's just a storyteller, you know, at its core, one way or the other. But like, yeah, walk us through like that journey from getting into one, then jumping from there into comics. And you haven't left tabletop gaming or modeling or anything like that. But why did you go into tabletop gaming, and then why did you transition over to comics?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, since I was a wee lad, I've always been very into all the levels of nerddom. I did gaming like early days, Dungeons and Dragons, Choose Your Own Adventure books, all that stuff back in the day. When I loved that, so I'd been doing the tabletop gaming for years and years. And that's kind of when 3D printing started to get popularized in the early days. I'm a software engineer by trade, so I'm interested in technology. So I had to get one just to try it myself, and then that became a aggressive addiction. I had done some 3D modeling when I was real young, and I picked it up again as just kind of a fun skill, and it kind of grew organically, the business there, and kept kind of cascading. And as part of that process, it's like I'm kind of doing world building for these models. Like the 3D models are designed in many cases to be game agnostic. So whether you're playing, you know, Starfinder or Dungeons and Dragons, whatever the game might be, you often need, you know, proxies or miniatures for these things. So that was where I started. But as I'm creating these groups of characters and fleets of starships and all this stuff, I'm in my head coming up with the world, and that's where the Ignis Quadrant kind of came from. And then I've been into comics my whole life. I was never really super into it when I was young because I lived in the boonies and we had no comics. But when I got into college, I got access to comics, and I read like the Pathfinder and D&D ones and stuff early. And it just seemed like a logical next step. I already had experience working with artists as part of the tabletop thing, you know, concept art, you know, art for book covers, all that stuff. And I loved it. I wanted to create. The addiction is now strong. I have way too many nerd addictions at this point.
It happens, my friend.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And from so Ignis Quadrant, to go from Ignis Quadrant to TOXX, so sci-fi seems to be kind of your core, like your favorite at this point. I think it's fair to say there's elements. Obviously, TOXX Mixology Noir as well has like some horror elements. Obviously, you call it Mixology Noir, some noirish elements as well. But TOXX, you know, you've got like it's post-apocalyptic, so and with some not supernatural. It is all kind of science-based, but you got like your mutations and your mutants and like your monstrosities that are coming from that. And you have a lot of fun with that. So you're almost in like Stephen King post-apocalyptic territory at that point. But would you say sci-fi is your bread and butter? Like, is that your most passionate genre?
Absolutely. I mean, I would say probably equally fantasy and sci-fi. I have a whole bunch of fantasy stuff planned as well, but I mean, you're not going to see me do a slice of life book or anything like that. It'll all be very fantastical. And even the Mixology Noir, like you mentioned, like they're horror in the genre if I had to define them, but they're very supernatural focused.
Yeah. Right. And okay, so getting into TOXX, this is a story that is, you know, if I had to, my pitch in my head when I was reading it was, you know, this is, as I already said, like Mad Max, but then meet something a little more larger than life, like a Book of Eli or like Mutant Chronicles. But then you've also got that Children of Men element to it, because of course the core of the whole story, the pitch of TOXX is basically, this is a future where the sun's like, we've obliterated the atmosphere. The sun's radiation is killing absolutely everything. People have been driven underground to slow the radiation, but all it does is slow it. And they developed a chemical called TOXX, like you get TOXXed to keep it at bay even longer, but it's all a waiting game. It only puts it off for yay long. And everyone's been sterile this entire, for how long has this post-apocalyptic wasteland been going on?
30 years.
30 years. So for 30 years, everything's been sterile. And then there is, and this is where the Children of Men thing kind of comes in, Children of Men / Rosemary's Baby, where you've got this sort of, you know, it's not a what do they call that? Miraculous conception. It's not a
Right,
miraculously conceived birth like in
It
Children
wasn't a
of Men.
miracle that caused it.
Right.
It's good old-fashioned regular
we get to even
sex.
see the proper exactly moment where it's happening. But
Analog.
to people's knowledge, this is still miraculous because it's what it was supposed to be impossible. Even with the old-fashioned way in this world. And when that happens, everything changes. Everyone wants this pregnant woman. She hasn't given birth yet. Everyone wants this pregnant woman for their own, sometimes for completely polar opposite purposes. But the thing that I loved about the book is that you, rather than just have this incredibly linear storyline of, here's the bad guy, here's the people we're rooting for, here's the one group of people that are the bad guys that want them for some nefarious purpose. There's just multiple factions going on. And I'm assuming this is probably, we're going to get a little bit more in the future because this is only volume 1. So this is one story arc, one storyline. But even here, you have multiple factions all going after her and this kind of a trio of protagonists that we're following that are helping her out, trying to escape all of the factions. But they also, they have a, I almost said they don't have anywhere to go, but that's not entirely true. They have a pie in the sky, Hail Mary place they might be able to go that they need to try and find out if it exists.
It's
if
the
they
oasis
can get there.
in the desert. Yeah.
Right. The oasis in the desert kind of a thing. So that is the setup of TOXX.
Yep.
Where did this, I just listed a bunch of things of how it spoke to me and what those influences seemed to be. But for you, where did the story come from? What were the influences? And start there.
Yeah, I mean, first off, you're a very, very succinct pitcher. That was great. Couldn't have written as good of a an overview myself, probably.
That's good. I thought I was rambling, but thank you.
Yeah, where's wine? We're supposed to do a little bit of that. No, it's a very, very personal story for me. I came up with the idea for this in the hospital. My wife gave birth to our first and only child right in the middle of the worst part of COVID. So we're sitting in the hospital, and all the hospital staff is in PPE. You can barely see their eyes,
Right.
And I remember a conversation where I was like, "Are we making a mistake bringing the kid into this nightmare of a world?"
Wow.
And then my brain started thinking, God, what if it really was a wasteland? What would the experience be like then? And also, I thought it was really interesting to kind of see the experience that myself and my wife both had of changing your mindset about what's important to you, what it means to care about somebody else, what does it mean to bring a life into the world. And I thought that would be really interesting to kind of put under the lens of Claire, the main protagonist, who is going through this, but she's never even thought it was a possibility. She lived her entire life never imagining that children would ever exist again for humanity. So, morality is very gray in the wasteland, and that's something I also wanted to play with the different factions, because when you're going to die, when all you're doing is trying to survive and you're doing a poor job at it, what is being, good morally get you? Absolutely nothing, right? So, you can't necessarily question the good and evil motives of these people. They're doing what they think is correct to survive. Right. And this baby is a resource to all of them in a different way. Yet she's going through this very real experience of realizing that after an entire lifetime of caring only about one life, what does this child mean to her? Is it something she wants? What does it mean for the world? All this stuff.
Right. Yeah.
So
I mean, that character alone, the idea that she has to carry the weight of being the sort of proverbial Mary.
Right.
Right. Knowing what those archetypes are, those legends are, it's a really dynamic character. I have a question for you though. In terms of the genesis and that inspiration, was it cathartic for you working that sort of, tether out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a huge believer in writing as an outlet therapeutically. Anybody that doesn't say that is probably not a very good writer. I think you have to write something that's personal to you, but 100%, it's parenthood is an interesting thing because it's you feel like it's such a mind shifting, unique, crazy experience. And then you're the vast majority of the world gets to do this. It's not that special and unique to become a parent, but you feel like it is to you. It's so specially unique. And I definitely found some I don't want to say cathartic, but some good, self-awareness by going through this process.
Okay. Yeah. Good. Awesome. And for your creators on this, I will say Ben Worrell, if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, perfect art for this story. I mean, it is great. Just did you guys, like, how did you guys find each other? How did you decide on this story? It's one of those things where if someone had told me you two had almost co-created it together, which doesn't seem to be the case, but if you had, I would have been like, I mean, his style is so perfect for this vista and this world and these characters.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that finding someone like him in just like, I have to find an artist for the story idea I have, that feels that kind of shocked me. So like, where did you guys find each other? And
I mean, I will say, like, I have to give Ben a lot of credit. You know, the designs of the individual mutants, like all the individual people in the factions and stuff. That was very much him. He sent me like sketches of like, hey, you know, originally I just wrote like a biker gang, you know, and he sent me a sketch of like 12 individual people with each unique thing and like a individual synopsis of each one and their characteristics and stuff. So he really had a good time with this. And the mutant design and stuff is all credit to Ben there. But no, one of my favorite things that I've always enjoyed as a creator is finding artists. So even before I did comics, when I was doing concept art and art for tabletop, I mean, I'll just sit and have a whiskey and search DeviantArt and ArtStation for hours and just try to find people whose work I think is great and is maybe at a point where they're not really well discovered yet, so I can kind of afford their skills maybe, but you know, bookmark them and just build up. I have a huge document of like artists I'd love to work with and their style notes and stuff. So Ben was awesome. I mean, every project I do, I will pay artists to do a couple sample pages. I think I tried 4 or 5 different artists for a few pages for TOXX, and Ben it wasn't even a question when I saw his art. So
that's cool.
That's how it shook up.
Yeah, the sample page, that's a good, and the fact that he took it upon himself to like make all the characters his own that way, you know, designing them through the roof. And because there was that sense of almost like, I know there are a lot of comics where 2 people get together and they kind of co-create it together right from the get-go. And then there are others where it's like kind of the artist's idea, but the artist doesn't feel confident enough to write it, but they've really already designed the whole freaking thing. So it's like someone needs to come in to like shape the story. And this felt like one of those because the art was so fine-tuned and so specific to the world that was being created. So yeah, amazing match.
Appreciate you saying that. Yeah, I mean, I set out for every one of my projects to make sure that what is produced is something that I feel like is at the level of quality of anything you'd find on a direct market comic book shelf, you know, even if it's not necessarily coming out in the direct market, even though TOXX did. But yeah, I mean, everything from the graphic design to the art to everything, the lettering, I feel like needs to be very top tier, and Ben definitely achieved that.
Very cool. And your co-writer on this one, Eric Palicki, why a co-writer on this one?
Oh yeah, for sure. So obviously I wrote the Ignis Quadrant by myself with the support of Bob Sally, who is a comic book veteran as a friend and editor. And then I did Mixology Noir myself, and I feel great about those books, but I want to constantly push myself to be better. I'm a huge believer, especially for my software engineering career, that if you're in a room and you're the smartest person in that room, you're in the wrong room. So I wanted to bring in somebody whose work I personally loved to help me, you know, one, hone my own craft, but also make the end result something that is really well polished and also, you know, lend some credence to the quality of the story, just in terms of pitching to publishers and all that stuff. And, you know, readers that are familiar with Eric's work, you know, it had a lot of benefits.
Right. Very cool. And so in this campaign as well, you have the Caravan of Corpses one shot as well. And this was something that was serialized on Global Comics originally. That's Comics with the Next Guys for anyone who is
in progress right now. I'm releasing it on Global Comics while I release it on the Kickstarter.
Gotcha. So is the version that we've seen in so the PDF that we read through, is that all the pages or are there more to come?
Yeah, that's 44 pages, one shot. This was an experiment of me wanting to I originally set out just as a creative experiment to learn, can I create a page in a little bit different format that'd be interesting to hold in your hand, but also one I could use to split into a vertical scroll reading format, or split into individual images to share image sequences on Instagram as a webcomic. And that's what the intention was. But as I got more into it, I'm like, I just want to publish this as a book and release it as single pages. And it was still a fun experience to learn how to do a little bit different format type writing.
Yeah. And was that format specifically for online, for the Global Comics sort of interface? Is that why the shape of the pages and whatnot?
Yeah. I mean, if you look at that book, it's specifically split into there's a 6-panel grid that is designed exactly to be able to cut into individual images to a certain resolution.
Yes.
So like I said, my original intent was to do that. I'm doing it a little bit, but I think it works just as good as a regular book. Especially when you hold it in your hands. 6 by 6 inches is going to be a fun format. Like, some people hate small comics, but I think it's novel, and in a trade show, like, you put something a little bit different on the table, people love that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, and Blake, Evan makes some of the most polished indies around. They're always gorgeous. I have to agree. I've, to date though, I've only backed you for digital so far. I'm a total digital head. It's rare that I do.
Don't feel bad. Yeah.
No, I've gotten so used to it. I mean, it's one of those things, I think, with digital comics where once you commit and you yourself, it's just growing accustomed to a new thing. And it's, in many ways, frankly, the older I get, there are modern comics today, printed comics, most of them choose font sizes that I'm also kind of like, I don't want to pinch zoom, goddammit. I'm like,
100%. 100%.
Yes.
Yeah.
I even find myself like, I'll be reading the physical comic and I'm just like, damn it. I'll grab my phone, turn the magnifying glass app on, and then like hold the phone over the physical comic. It's coming through and showing on the phone page. I'm like, why am I not just fucking reading this on I am reading it on my phone, and it's a physical comic in my hand. This is stupid. I should just get the digital comic.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, that's the nice thing about global comics, though. I can't recommend them enough. But when you upload a book there, you can do the guided view, similar to what like Amazon Kindle offers. So even though it's page format, I did the guided view on Global Comics. So on a mobile phone, it'll take you frame by frame, and your reading experience will be very mobile optimized. But I mean, I bit the bullet years ago and bought an iPad just for comics. And once I realized I can lay in a bed in the darkness with a backlight and read comics with zoom, I'm like, the colors are brighter. You don't have to worry about bending pages. Like, everything about the digital reading experience is better, in my opinion.
Yes. Your hand.
You go on a plane and you can bring 100 books with you if you want.
Yes, exactly. And pre-download them so they're ready to go. It's not weight. You don't need lug it. It's beautiful.
Absolutely.
It's beautiful. I've never gone in for a tablet today. Well, I've owned a tablet, then I never used it. It was weird. So I've never gotten another one. But my phone is kind of a little bit of an oversized, like one of those Samsung Galaxy Note Plus, things where it's like, it's sizable enough that when I flip it to orient it so that you do scroll a little bit on the page. And I do actually, as much as the guided view is something that every once in a while I'll get a comic where the guided view is my preference, but most of the time I just like flipping it. Like I'll flip it to look at the page as a whole to kind of see the layout. Then I'll flip it so it flip. And then it's like, as I scroll, it's all perfect sized so that I no longer need to zoom in. I can just scroll down and it's exactly what I want it to be. It is weird because reading physical comics is almost the thing that I sort of complain to myself in my head while I'm doing it these days, because I'm like, this isn't as good as just if I had it on my phone, which is the exact opposite of most people still.
Well, and you and many people do this where you said, I've only backed digital so far, as if it's like some kind of like apology. But I'll tell you what, the dirty secret of comics is that if I'm selling a $5 digital issue and I'm selling a $9 physical floppy plus shipping, at the end of the day, the margin I'm getting from that digital book is at least the same, if not better, than I'm getting for the print version. I don't have any fulfillment work to do. I don't have any inventory to move. Like, I love digital comics to become more popular.
Right. Well, there have been a few. Well, I think there might have been one person or something that have tried like a purely digital campaign. I don't think we're there yet where that's really going to fund itself. Or especially if you're trying to fund like production, like even just the art costs, if you're paying an artist like a decent page rate and things like that, like that is a steep hill to climb. But I do think that, to your point, the thing that blows my mind is how many creators, one, don't offer digital at all, or it's such an afterthought. There are many campaigns where I'll go to and like they're offering digital of the latest comic, and I'm like, what about, it's issue 3 or 2, and I'm like, what about? And I check the add-ons. I make sure it's not just hiding in the add-ons somewhere. And sure enough, it's just nowhere to be seen. And I'm like, can I get a digital of the number 1? And they're like, oh, sorry. And then they'll add it, but I'm just like, good God, person, like, come on, like this is your series. It should all be in digital. It doesn't have to be that important to you personally, but in terms of a super easy product to offer, that, like you said, the fulfillment, is it's the easiest fulfillment to do.
Oh my God, 30 seconds. Yeah.
Right. You're prepping a PDF
link.
for the printer anyway. And all you got to do is downsize that fucker. Like, you don't want it to be that insane of a file size, but you've got a PDF. Just make it something that's easy to download and store somewhere, and you're set. It's anyway.
Well, I mean, it's not even just that too. Like, even people that are anti-digital forget that a lot of international backers, the cost of shipping is a deal breaker, right?
Insane.
They love to back you,
right.
Digital's the only avenue they can do that.
Right. And I'm the same way. Like, there are a lot of Australia creators that I want to back, but it's like, it is only digital. Like, I'm not even gonna pretend. Ronan the Accuser, thank you for joining us, Ronan. Yeah, it happens all the time. Yes, it does.
Real quick here, Evan. We talked about the artist there, Ben, for a while. Your colorist, Marta and Demira, I think they split up duties between 1 to 3, and 4 and 5, right?
Correct. Yep.
And I want to know about your relationship with your editor, James Emmett. What was that process like? What was...
Yeah, I mean, I got connected with James really early on. He's actually one of the people that helped connect me to Eric. James is wonderful. He's obviously a editor at Mad Cave now, so he's busy with a bunch of very popular books that are not my little indie books. But he's very, very talented, very articulate, and really knows how to help the stuff that I was struggling with, like the pacing and like the important beats in the story plot and all that stuff. So he was really good to work with. And then, obviously for the colorists, like, I would have liked to keep Marta through it, but she had too much work and that didn't work out, which is all too common in comics. But
yes,
sure. Damir is great. He's working with me on another couple of upcoming series as well. So
good deal.
Good to get more people in the court.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're building
you can never. It's never a bad thing when people are too busy. I mean, it's bad for you. Like, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, you're taking off. That's awesome. All right, so let's actually take a quick look. I am going.
Yeah. Hold on, can I ask a question?
Oh, sure.
I want to know what kind of wines we're drinking and stuff here. Isn't it the hard?
Oh, we do that at the end.
We usually save it for near the end. You get to see us sipping it, but we reveal it once we've sort of talked about the book, so that people understand to the best of their ability, like, why we're pairing what we're pairing with the book. That's how we do it, but we can.
That's usually our anchor at the end of every episode.
So, is there any pressure for me to drink this whole bottle during the podcast? Is that the goal, or is this like a relaxed sipping scenario?
Total goal. Go.
We're sippers mostly because I can't guzzle because I'd be drunk after glass 1. So, but knock yourself out. You may be more entertaining after a full bottle.
And Dallas is on the. Where are you based, actually, Evan?
I'm in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Oh. Okay, so you're East Coast as well. So that's
dead center. Pretty much.
Oh, that's dead center. Yeah. Oh, I thought it was still like kind of Michigan-y, like still technically East Coast.
No, we're just west of the Mississippi.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Okay. So it's still like Dallas is usually already a little bit in on the drinking by the time we start these things, because he is true blue East Coast right now.
Your time zone's a little later. I get it.
Is the wine irradiated? No, it is not. Although the wine I am drinking, the one I just finished, I didn't start with the one that I'm actually going to pair. I'm about to pour it because this one's got a little higher alcohol content. I didn't want to start with it. But it is not irradiated. But I chose my wine tonight in a bit of the spirit of the comic, and also in the spirit of Evan as a creator, I think, because he has a bit, what little I know of him, both from the Ignis Quadrant, from Mixology, from now TOXX, and then I've been getting to know him a little bit on Discord in the last couple of days as well. And he definitely seems to have a little bit of a try shit out and break things ethos, and just
100%.
Yes. And so I was like, I wanted a wine that was created by a try shit out and break things, and was almost a failure multiple times, and they kept rescuing it from oblivion until they found something that worked. So it's going to be a quirky one. It's going to be a little off the beaten path, but it definitely has it's dessert wine style alcohol content. So I got to go a little slower.
I was going to say, you got to pace yourself with that situation.
Yes.
Dude.
Oh God. I need
to more podcasts need to be like, or not podcasts. I always say podcasts, but more live interview shows need to be like this. I'd love to do a whiskey themed one, rum themed one.
Beer, there is someone there. One of the other comic creators that shares the Discord, Chad P. I'm not sure what his full name is, but he wants to do a beer one. So we might have a beer one coming. But yeah, whiskey bourbon. I mean, those are huge ones, especially for.
Caveat there, every time I've ever chatted live with Blake, we end up drinking whiskey in it. We end up on topics that are not even remotely related to comics.
No. Yeah. I mean, that is part of the fun. It's
the same here too. So
yes, I think so far our most rambling one was pretty close. It was just over 3 hours. Yeah. And you know, when that stuff happens, I'm like, is that the best way to do this? And maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but
you know, there's discords and stuff, like, as you know, for like the creators and stuff, or people that are like working in comics, but it's a pretty lonely pursuit. I love just having real human faces talking about comics, like, because in my day-to-day life there's nobody that does this. It just feel like you're on an island.
All right, I want to fuck around and find out about wine. I thought that was Jameson. The one Dallas is drinking. Is that what you're talking about, Blake? Yeah. That is, it's a little Jameson colored. It's true, it would be great to drink it out of a wine glass. I actually do get a kick out of that thought. To just be as hoity-toity with your whiskey as possible. But yeah, we'll get more into the wine. Let's take a quick detour just to take a look at that Kickstarter page, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk drinks, and we're going to talk comics in sort of broader strokes as we talk about drinks. But first things first. I always feel like it's important to get some visuals on the screen just so people know what the fuck we're talking about if they haven't seen this series yet. Yes, TOXX 2X's, as mentioned before, Volume 1. In a wasteland where humanity has been sterile for 30 years. I should have just looked at the stupid log line at the top of the page. I had to ask it. A woman becomes pregnant and must fight to keep hope alive. Volume 1 collects issues 1 through 5, but issue number 5 is new. So if you've backed 1 through 4, you can just get issue 5. You don't have to get like the Volume 1 trade paperback. What kind of bonus material outside of like pinups and things like that are in the trade paperback? Like, what do people get if they want to get more than just issue number 5?
Yeah, I've had, there's various back matter in each of them. I've kept the length pretty succinctly short because it was obviously coming out from Blood Moon in the direct market too. So there was a little back matter in each issue, some concept art, and like a note for me about the origin with my wife's pregnancy and stuff like that. But the trade collects all of that back matter plus all of the covers for all 5 issues, which is like 20 some covers with some amazing artists. It's a pretty great gallery. And then I do have some stretch goal stuff, some pinups, and some different stuff to get into here once it gets a little further along.
All right, very, very, very cool. All right, so let's go down a little ways. And just to take it, this is the full cover for TOXX Volume 1, and this is Ben Worrell's art, guys.
Well, the cover is actually made by another great artist for the trade. It's Alessandro Amoruso who did the cover here.
Interesting. Okay. I would have thought this was Ben. They have
styles definitely. Yeah, they complement each other for sure.
They do. That's real.
But we're talking about how great digital comics are. I love digital, but I'm becoming a snob for book quality too. Like I don't print books that aren't on higher quality, like at least 80-pound gloss paper, and this one's going to have embossing and soft touch laminate and all the bells and whistles. So if you like books that feel good, get the trade.
Yeah, I think 80. I just did a test print run of a comic I wanted to do, and I did. Did I do 80? I think I did 80 on the inside, 100 on the cover, and like the cover's perfect. But I do think 80 might have been slightly, like, it feels oppressive. Like, something about it, I was like, ooh.
I love that 80-pound. I mean, that's what I did for the Ignis Quadrant, too. It's just hefty. It just feels good.
Yeah, it is.
It is very hefty. I'm thinking if I go down, it'll probably just be to, like, 70 or something. I feel like it was just that touch. But I do think that, like, the thin paper that a lot of people do and sometimes even a really thin cover can be, and especially for something like Kickstarter, where it's like these are all in their way special editions of things, so they really ought to be something that feels really good to hold on to because you paid a premium to support the project.
100%.
$15 a comic is not, even if it's $10 a comic, like that's not a retail cover price.
That's the gripe I have. Like, you have to differentiate a book in Kickstarter from the direct market, right? And one easy way to do that costs you like 10 cents a copy in some cases is better paper stock, or like the special features, like I mentioned, the soft touch laminate and embossing. Like, for me to add embossing in the soft touch laminate, even at the lower, like relatively lower quantities I'm printing this trade, it's like 80 cents a book. Like, come on, creators, make these books awesome. Give us something that is better than we're going to find, from a Marvel trade quality book.
Yeah, 100%. Yes. All right. TOXX number 5 cover right here. Da da da. And Blood Moon Comics. I will say I'm a big fan of Blood Moon Comics. I've been getting a number of the books that they've been putting out. So how did you where did that relationship come from, and how did you get them to pick up TOXX?
Yeah, good old fashioned pitch submission. I liked
wow.
that what they were doing. They were they're not super new, but they're relatively new. So
right.
And this is my first direct market experience. So I wanted to be something that was a little bit more, I don't want to say like white glove, but I knew somebody had bandwidth to kind of like help me with the stuff, even though it ended up being pretty straightforward. So I thought it was just a good fit.
Perfect. And they have none of the have any of the issues through them come out yet?
Yeah, 1 through 3 is out. 4 is coming out shortly. It's got slightly delayed at the printer, but another huge bonus, obviously, is like not every publisher is open to crowdfunding simultaneously. Blood Moon very much was all for me doing my own stuff here to try to recoup some of the costs of the art and then the direct market releases as well. So I think we'll see more of that in the industry, but it's very creator friendly.
Cool. All right. And going down to the sample page. So, this is Ben Royal's art. We're on to the interiors.
Yeah, this is all Ben.
Yep, I can say that. But you can see this is like some of the mutated vultures. So there's definitely like a creature feature element to some of this. But this is Claire. This is our pregnant lady who we're following through the thing. And these are, this is one of the trio. This guy's not one because this is 4 months ago. So this blonde-haired guy, it plays a big part, but it's not one of the main trio exactly. I'm not going to say anything more if you haven't read TOXX yet, because that's a big part of the story, a big key part. But yeah, going through, you can kind of see just the whole aesthetic. Here are some of the mutants on horseback. And again, that's sort of like demonic, monstrous element that is laid on top of this sort of Mad Maxy world. All right.
Yeah, I have to call out too that my favorite franchise since I've been like 12 years old has been Fallout. So I always knew I had to do a post-apocalyptic book.
Yeah.
But I had to like find a way to make, as somebody who's like very analytical and rooted in science, I had to find a way to make sure that the way the world became wastelandic was like believable. So I yet again drank a bunch of whiskey and went onto Reddit to the various subreddits and ended up in the astrophysics subreddit asking these guys about this, and I got some really interesting answers that helped me kind of determine how I was going to make this wasteland situation happen.
That's exactly what I do.
Actually rooted in science.
Something rooted in science. Yeah, when I'm writing something rooted in science.
And we got Kenrick. Kenrick, thanks for joining us, man. Cool cover and awesome art. I'm going to have to check it out. Yes, you
Appreciate
should.
It.
The art on this thing is on its own level. It's really, really good, and it's so fitting. I think I keep harping on that, but it's like that's one of the things that really struck me is just. This feels like one of those, artist does everything. Like he's a one-man show, and this all just fits so harmoniously together. The fact that it's an entire team making this comic and it looks this of a piece is, that is something.
I think that's what shocks me the most. And I actually, to that end, Evan, what was that timeline? What was that process for the first outing, time-wise? Because it does feel as if, the sort of production line was just really efficient and everyone was on board and on the same accord.
And Kenrick, just to get one last comment in here, to be honest, it reminds me of early Dead World, but in color. I actually like that. That is true.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, that was an interesting challenge for this series too. Was like, how do you take a world that's deader than shit that shouldn't really have any vibrant colors other than the sun destroying things and make it not boring? Right. So that was, I'll take your compliment, Dallas, to my art direction for that, which I give myself credit for. I mean, like I said, in terms of like logistically, my brain just works really well in terms of like, this has to happen, send this to the art, the artist, get the colors on here. I do the lettering myself and the graphic design and pre-press and everything. So at the end of the day, I'm like trying to kind of tie everything together with a look and feel that feels consistent throughout, which I think is a big advantage as a creator. I recommend every writer learns how to letter because it really, really makes you feel closer to the process and often causes way too many edits on things, but it's worth it, I think. So, it's all about that kind of look and feel throughout.
Yeah, I did it. Honestly, I generally don't read the covers for most things. I just go right in, and
Sure.
I did not realize that this was a full team until I was sort of halfway through. I was like, "Oh shit!"
Nice.
This 100% feels as if it's just a solitary creator who does the full production
Right.
on his
Awesome.
own. So, bravo!
Yeah, it all clicks together. It all comes together. And yeah, this is Caravan of Corpses. This is that Global Comics one that's in the nifty, as you can see, the format here as with this opened wraparound cover. But you can see this, and then here are some pages in that panel layout that Evan was talking about. And this one was so Caravan of Corpses is really it's sort of your if TOXX is the TV show, this is your one-off feature film, action feature film. Where it's like one single location, all big action. Like the one single comment was like, here's the team, this is what's happening, this is where they go. And it's like, that's all the story is about. And it is like go, and does not let up. It's very straightforward, but I liked this. I read this after reading all of volume 1. And I really liked this as weirdly a palette chaser. After the volume 1. Because volume 1 was so there was so many characters and story and so much to take in, and then this was just and now that you know what this world is, here's let's have fun, and here's your action story.
And you probably throw back to our earlier conversations. You probably appreciated I intentionally made this have bigger font sizes and a little more digestible action, so it could be read easily on mobile devices. So it was not an accident.
Awesome. I do appreciate it. At this point, I'm really because there are so many. I've been trying. So a good example, there are a number. I'm not going to name any names. But there were a couple of Kickstarter creators who like stuff that I backed digitally, and I love them. And then they got direct market releases, and I was like, well, I'll support them by doing that too. And I wanted to read the physical copies as physical copies, and I was like, oh God, this font, I can't. I think I'm just going to stick to the digital. But I bought it and I supported them, but I could not do the font they had.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, there's gripes. I have gripes for every aspect of comics in some way, and as everybody who reads comics does. But lettering is one of those things that can make or break a story really easily.
Yes, 100%. And here's the whole team: Evan, Eric, Ben, Marta, Damir, James, and of course Blake coming in at the tail end. He set this interview up, so everyone. Say hi, shout off in the comments, say hi to Blake if you know Blake. We owe this all to him. And outside of all the preview pages and TOXX issue 2, anything else about the campaign here, Evan, that you think people should know? Wow, I love you did it also. It's like it's illegible, they're super small, but people can really see. I don't think I ever scrolled this far down the campaign page, but this is really cool.
If you got a book, I don't Kickstarter a book until it's finished, and which makes a lot of sense for both my own sanity, but backers, comfort levels. But if you're going to go to a comic store and you want to look at a book, you're going to pick it up and you're going to flip through there. Like, why shouldn't you be able to get a similar sense of a book on Kickstarter?
That's really cool.
I'm actually working on a way to build a flip through animation for these books too, so I can put on future Kickstarters, which I did for Mixology Noir. But
yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, this I might swipe this idea in the future because it's kind of kick-ass. You're right. It is like flipping through a book. Like you're not reading it, but it's like you're really getting a good sense of like
it's the typography of the book. Yeah, it's great. Yeah,
very cool. All right, yeah, and that is we've got about 15 days to go. So guys, you got till Thursday, November 23rd.
That's right.
9:35 a.m. Pacific time. So. Make it November 22nd. Don't save it for the 23rd. You might miss out.
Totally worth it, guys. The art is fantastic.
But totally worth it.
Great storytelling.
And it looks like you're almost about 2/3 of the way there. So you're getting very, very close. And with 15 days to go, I mean, I think you're sitting fat and happy, I think, in terms of just funding. But of course, everyone wants to get more than just your bare minimum funding. So everyone, if you're thinking about it, you're still sitting on it, this is the place to go. TOXX 2X's Volume 1. Evan, anything else about this before we stop talking specifically about the campaign? Oh, are you muted?
Well, for anybody who's interested in the trade specifically, I'm putting the order for those in actually tomorrow because I'm buying a lot of extra copies for selling at trade shows and stuff.
Oh, cool.
Or not trade shows, but so that those books will be in hand. So as soon as the funding period happens, which is 2 weeks after the Kickstarter ends, I'll be shipping these out. So this isn't one of those Kickstarters where you're going to wait months for the book. You're going to get the book really damn fast.
Cool. All right.
So, Christmas presents for your friends.
That's
Christmas
right.
presents, exactly.
Post-apocalyptic Christmas presents.
Yeah, I think everyone who's doing like October, that's one of the big sells is like, we will get it to you before the massive holidays hit.
Right.
And or what, there are some campaigns, of course, that won't be fulfilling until like March, at which point they're good to go.
And before shipping goes up 15% for the holidays too.
Oh yeah,
exactly. That, and there are so many books where I think there was one campaign. It was like a hardcover that I put a lot of money in, a physical hardcover, and they shipped it while I was out of town, and I couldn't stop it from trying to arrive, and it just sat outside for like a week. And I was like, oh shit.
Was it a plastic, or was it just like a Gemini?
Yeah, just a Gemini kind of a thing. Yeah, my biggest fear, like I'm in LA, I'm in an apartment in LA, so it's like anyone can just walk by and walk away with it. Like there's no
in a hardcover. You probably paid $40-$50 for that thing, probably
easily. And it was still there when I got back, but I was so ready for it to just be gone.
Oh man,
gone with the wind, and I was just like, fuck. I'm like, don't ship it, because you don't know if people are home. People can't trying to stop shipping or deal with the shipping, the USPS or UPS or anything during the holidays, doing anything special is impossible. So it's just like, don't ship it out during like mid-December to first week of January. Just ixnay. Like just don't do it.
On the flip side of that, it's always nice to get reminded that humanity doesn't totally suck when your book like that sits there for a week,
Right, exactly. And no one took it, and I was like, thank you. Everyone was out of town, I guess. I don't know. Everyone was busy with their own things. But, especially during the holidays, though, there's all those groups where it's like, package snatching is like a thing. It's a whole organized thing. So yeah, I was so ready for that not to happen. But if you're a creator, if you use Kickstarter, you're listening to this, don't ship during the holidays. Even if you just want to get it done and out of your house, apartment, whatever, I totally get that. But oh my God, wait till January. It just makes everyone's life,
and you'll save money.
And you'll save money. So best all the way around. All right, so let's talk about what we're drinking today. I think we are at that point. Dallas, you get to start us off today.
That's right. All right, guys. So as you can see, I have an light amber colored wine on the glass here. So let's start with the world here you've crafted. You've got some really acute textures going on, some sensory things that I tend to respond to. I love the idea of the sort of arid orange kind of, radiated kind of environment. It gives this sort of sand in the air feel, really fine sort of particulate matter in the air. So I knew I wanted something that was going to have a pretty high tannin that left a kind of sandy feel on the tongue. That was my en route into choosing the wine. So I chose what's technically a white wine, but is termed an orange wine because of the process. And for those who don't know, the orange wine, particularly with this particular orange wine, which does not come from Spain, their process includes the ripe grapes, the skins, the stalks, the pips. They're all placed into a very particular pot style, which is called the Qvevri. It's sort of a clay amphora. If you saw it, you would recognize the shape. It's buried in the earth, and this has been the process for this particular wine, and wine in general from this region, for thousands of years. Some say the wine tradition of this country goes back to the 6th millennium. But I chose the, let's see if I can line it up here, the Rkatsiteli Qvevri orange wine. It is a Georgian.
Yes.
It has a really high tannic structure, so it does leave this almost sandy sort of after texture and taste, which it pulls you into the world. It kind of complements what's going on in your piece here. You get lots of like baked apple.
Putting the spelling on screen for that one because the Rkatsiteli, however you pronounce it,
Rkatsiteli.
It does make one of the best quote unquote orange wines in the world.
Yeah.
Like you cannot go wrong with one of
It
those.
is.
So if you find one of those spelled like that, if anything with an R and then a K and no vowels in between, you know it's the one. And it is amazing wine. So,
It really is quite lovely.
Very cool.
It's very full bodied, bright. You get some plums in there. You get, like I said, the sandy structure of the tannin is kind of the star of the show for me. I'm generally not a fan of orange wine, but this particular vintage bottle and with the comic here, the volume here, really go well together. So that is my pick, the Rkatsiteli Qvevri Orange Wine 2021. Yeah.
I appreciate such a classy choice for my book.
Mine is not. So, going off a little bit, I mean, it's classy. It's classy in its way, but it is definitely so.
Is it classy with a K, Dave?
Classy with a K.
Drinking out of a snifter, so it must be fancy.
Exactly, it must be fancy. But the color is not what you expect, and this is a dessert wine. This has a.
Is that a Sancerre? What is that?
No, it is not.
It's like an aged...
And the alcohol content on this bad boy. Let me see if I can find the ABV. 21%.
Looks like a
tawny. Oh, that's booze. That ain't wine.
looks like a tawny port. Is it a tawny port?
It does a little bit. Now, if you see it in person, though, it's pinker rather than browner, which is a bizarre color. Let me tell you.
It's pinker.
It's
I thought that was cognac or something.
No, I know but it's much lighter. The lighting doesn't really show it very well, but it's very see-through. It is, and it's somewhere between a brown and a pink. It is technically probably not a wine because it is not made from grapes. But the reason I chose
this maple.
Nope.
More the maple.
This is not. Yeah.
Is that part of the description? You don't have to make wine from grapes. I had all kinds of redneck uncles in Wisconsin that would make wine out of dandelions and plums and bark and all kinds of shit.
Well, and of course, elderberry wine is like an old thing that people always talk about, and like raspberry wine. I think you can make it with fruit, maybe, but I don't. It's a question. Like, what is the definition? And to some degree, I suspect calling those things wine when it's not from grapes is just a colloquial, like we've accepted it, but it's none of it's technically wine. Or it's just like the way in which it's made is like a vinification, and therefore it's wine. That I don't know. I think
the colloquial treatment of these sort of elements predates viticulture.
Put things from nature into a state where they will ferment and then drink it and hope you don't die.
Exactly.
But see, that's all alcohol. That's where I think it's like, so what makes it a wine? And that I don't know. That's something I really need to look into to figure out, like, what do the authorities on the subject say? And then is everything else just like local? This is But so this is not made from grapes. So whatever that makes it. But what they do call it, it's from a winery. And what happened was this was a winery up in Michigan, and Michigan's a great place. Like, it's a big agricultural state, and they make a lot of berries and of course this was very far up. This is a place called Petoskey, which is right at what they call the tip of the mitt. So it's like, if Michigan's the glove, it's like the top of the middle finger. It's like as far north as you can get without crossing over into Canada, kind of a thing. It's like right there at the very tippity top of the north before going to Canada. And in Canada, there was a fruit grower that had this whole truckload of what's called Saskatoon berries.
Oh, okay.
And
obviously from Canada, the berries, I mean.
Yeah. The berries. Although I think they can probably grow in Michigan as well, but it is definitely a cold weather. Now, the cool thing, it's called the Saskatoon berry. They call it a berry because they're these tiny little round things, and they look a lot like blueberries, but they're technically not berries. They're related to apples. And they're technically like little teeny tiny round apples that have that very mealy quality when you bite into them, like an apple, not the mushiness of a berry. And so this whole truckload of Saskatoon berries, I can't remember. I went to the winery and they told me the story. I don't remember it like blow for blow, but something happened where this truck, they were just like, oh, we can't sell it, or whoever wanted it reneged on the offer, something like that. And they were like, do you want this whole truckload? We'll sell it to you for a piece. Like, we will sell it to you for like pennies on the crate. And this winery was like, okay, maybe we can make something out of it. And they bought the whole truckload for like pretty much nothing. They ferment, and they were like, let's try and make a wine out of it. They tried to make a wine out of it. It was disgusting. It was like, they made it, they fermented it, and they were like, oh no, this is undrinkable. So then they're like, okay, let's fortify it. They fortified it. They were like, oh yes, we're getting somewhere. After fortifying it, they were then like, now let's they had experimented with some early batches. Now they're like, okay, let's keep extra residual sugar in there too, like, because the first attempt they made, they tried to make a dry wine, and that was the disgusting thing. That was where it was like, nope, this needs to be fortified and sweet like a port. So they essentially made a port wine style beverage out of these Saskatoon berries, and motherfucker, it's delicious. It is so goddamn good. 21% alcohol. It smells like strawberries. I will say that. I mean, it smells like fakes. It smells like artificial scent of strawberries.
Like a Yankee Candle
like,
or something?
Like Saturday morning strawberries. Huh?
If you had sisters when you were younger, did they have the strawberry shortcake figures that actually smelled like the fruit those figures were supposed to? So I had an older sister. She had strawberry shortcake. And like every character, you got the dolls, and the dolls were like scratch and sniff. And they all smelled like artificial fruit flavors. And this smells like that type of, like a scratch and sniff strawberry sticker. That is what this thing smells like naturally. And with that nice kick of alcohol, because it is 21% alcohol. And on the palate, I mean, it's borderline syrup. It's really
I was going to say, how much of that
really
can you drink before it's too much?
Right. And honestly, though, it's interesting because the 21% alcohol really cuts through the sugar. I think they found that right balance between the sugar and the alcohol to where the two are balancing each other out often. So it's not too cloying, or doesn't feel too cloying. The alcoholic kick, it's not a kick. It's there. I mean, you're like, oh yeah, there's alcohol there, but it doesn't blow your sinuses out. You're not like anything. Like, it's smooth. It goes down nice. And this is something where not only in the spirit of Evan and TOXX and sort of humanity in that wasteland, we read and had on the show another kind of post-apocalyptic comic recently. Me and Dallas were just talking about this right before Evan joined us prior to the show, Monster Matador. I don't know if you're familiar with that comic, Evan, but this, TOXX has similar vibes post-apocalyptically in that regard, where it's like humanity trying to deal with what has caused the post-apocalypse and continues to cause the post-apocalypse, and how they're rebuilding society and things like that. And it had this element of like, for Monster Matador, I went something much more rustic and chewy and dusty, and like, because you want that feeling of like you're living rough around the edges. Like, that is what both of these comics give. So I wanted something that had a little bit of a rough edge to it, but in this case, it's rough in a different way, because this was such an experiment. I do not know of a Saskatoon berry alcoholic anything in known existence except this fucking thing. I've looked it up. I've Googled it. This is the one winery that made a huge batch of it. And let me tell you, this is here's the bottle right here. It's Thunder Bay Winery out of Michigan. And they call this Cabin Fever is what they decided to label the bottle. And it's 500 milliliters, so it's about 2/3 of a normal size bottle of wine, a little bit bigger than your normal dessert size, which is about 375 milliliters. And it's $19 a bottle, which is an amazing price for this. And, it's unique. It was an experiment that almost went wrong many times before they finally figured something out that was delicious. I think it's one of the tastiest dessert wines I've ever had. I love it. It is weird though. Like, you are working when you're first tasting it, because you're like, what the is this? And you're taking it in and you're trying to decipher all these flavors. It's not unpleasant. You just don't know what it is. And I think both the ingenuity and, as I was saying, that spirit of try shit out and break things, but then come out with something amazing in the end. I think that just speaks to both the world of TOXX and to Evan as a creator. So this was my pairing. I enjoyed sipping this. What I didn't think to open this until I was reading Caravan of Souls. So I'd already tried a couple other wines that were kind of my backups while I was reading Volume 1. But for Caravan of Souls, I read this. Awesome.
So the
Caravan of Souls
takeaway,
a little, yeah.
The takeaway is if life gives you lemons / an apocalypse / Saskatoon berries, put brandy in it and get drunk.
Exactly. Right. Put brandy in it and maybe leave a bunch of sugar in it too.
That's really all
you can't go wrong if you leave the sugar and the alcohol in it. Let's just put it that way. So yeah, that's what I'm drinking. Yeah, Mr. Evan, what are you drinking? Evan?
Well, you guys are substantially more refined and educated in your choices than me. I had to pick one out of my at-home supply, which was vastly dwindling at the moment. So I'm going to manufacture a story to match the wine. But I grew up in northern Wisconsin, and my parents, or my mother, my grandmother, all were very much into sewing. So I have almost all the blankets in my home, including under beds and stuff, are homemade blankets that my aunts or mom or grandma made. And they last for, decades. They kind of wear out. And if an apocalypse did happen, one of the things I would definitely be packing up would be some of these blankets. So to that end, I chose one of my options, which was the Napa Valley Quilt. It's a Cabernet. Nothing too fancy.
Oh yeah.
It's not bad.
It's at least medium fancy, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I got it because I wanted to try something that was a little bit more higher shelf than I usually buy, but I personally prefer more Pinots than Cabs. This one's a little bit too sweet for me. I don't get enough texture of like a tobacco or a wood or something I would prefer from a Cab. But it's going down pretty good, so I can't complain.
Awesome.
So
and
for you, somehow.
And for you drinking that bad boy, did you have a comic that you wanted to showcase that you love or have been digging? Whether it's specifically meant to be paired with Quilt or whether it's just, and this is the comic I definitely want everyone to know about. What you got there?
Oh, man.
Oh, you didn't get the memo on that one, Blake. But this is something we
go ahead.
Off the top of your head. What do you love?
Just free ball. What are some of your go-tos, your faves, your recommends? What are your recs?
Oh man. I think I want to say this first because I have to call myself out. When we started the show and I was getting everything ready here, I was sitting here, I'm like, why isn't this fucking bottle working? I was trying to use my foil cutter on the twist top bottle. I don't know if you guys noticed that. So
that's good. I mean, it kind of will help perforate, get through the perforation, I guess. But
yeah. So because of that, I will recommend with one of my favorite comics and one of the first ones I ever read that got me hooked on comics, because I'm like, everything's going to hell, but I want to keep drinking and I got to get this shit to work no matter what I do. So I recommend Fear Agent by Rick Remender, which is very much a dude just trying to get drunk and avoid what's happening around him and trying to get all his gadgets and shit to work while the world is falling down upon him. Very good classic book. I don't know how great it's aged. I haven't read it for a while.
I haven't read it in a while either. I think I read all of Volume 1 back in the day. Then I waited for it to finish, and I didn't go back to it, but I want to because I know it finished after 4 or 5 volumes, something like that.
I think there was 5.
5. Yeah.
I don't remember. What's the other? Just off the top of my head, the newest
Black Science
series,
or something like that was another one.
That was another one for Remender. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't recommend this because I haven't started reading it, but one I just purchased that I'm really excited to read hopefully tonight is Killadelphia. If either of you read that one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm very excited.
We haven't read it, but that's another one that
I've read it.
On the list. Oh, you have read it. Nice.
Yeah.
I listened to the creator the other day on a podcast, and he's very well spoken and talks about how a lot of the themes in there are past trauma, but it's about vampires that have been alive forever. I'm really excited to read it. So I'm going to give a forward-looking recommendation.
Cool.
It's good?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, good choices, man. Yeah.
Unrelated to my wine entirely, but hey,
that's fine.
Still good comments.
Well, so what do you like to drink when you're creating, when you're writing?
Yeah, I mean, if it's not obvious from Mixology Noir, I like cocktails. I'm a craft cocktail bartender, ex-craft cocktail bartender for a lot of years. I have a home bar. So I've always been very intrigued by old cocktails that have been around for a long time. The Sazerac was one of the stories in Mixology Noir, which is drink that made its way all the way down the Mississippi in the jazz era.
Right.
The old bartender here in my local bar that I love, he was 85 years old, and he would talk about some of the jazz players that in like the 40s that would come through and give him the original recipes. So
wow.
I love like historic, interesting cocktails like that haven't changed.
Yes. Yes.
So,
although
but I'm usually drinking
I also
whiskey.
I also love cocktails where it's like there are those strange regional mutations of the cocktail that happen where it's like only in this one city in this one state do they make it with a totally different alcohol, and it's like
Wisconsin with old fashions. Yeah, we have brandy and cherry juice.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Like,
that is Wisconsin with the old fashioned. Yes, the brandy Wisconsin, and everyone's like no, and Wisconsin's like yes, that's how it's always been made.
Yep.
So yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's doing something interesting like that. I mean, you'll find this when you get into the mixology noir, since you said you backed that one too. But
yes,
the other one is Vesper, which is the original recipe that Ian Fleming used in the James Bond book for James Bond's martini, and that one has some interesting ingredients like quinoa, which has changed a lot since World War II. You can't get it exactly the same anymore. But I just love the history of alcohol as it relates to like how trends in humanity have forced different style of drinking, and like the old fashioned as an example is truly just like put sugar in this shitty whiskey that was made in a moonshine still because it's not palatable otherwise, you know?
Right. And like what people had access to, depending on, especially during times like Prohibition and shit like that, where it's like changes everything. And
I was in Montana for a snowboard trip a couple years ago, and I had a really interesting experience where we went into this old like leather factory, and the woman tour guide gave us all a shot of whiskey, and she'd make us take it and hold it in our mouths, and then she talked us through this whole thing. And she called it the Cowboy Chew. Essentially, it tied back to when cowboys from Texas would come up to Montana with their horses and their cattle, and how when they'd go place to place, they could barely afford anything. So they'd have one silver dollar would get them a hooker, a meal, and a shot of whiskey, and like a local water. Yep. But they would use that shot of whiskey to understand like what the local water quality was, what the grains available and stuff was. So she talked us through like the different palate pieces of the whiskey, and it was just a really cool experience.
Yes, and holding
so in terms of your mixology, what your original creations? Wow, what are some of your go-tos? What's in your handbook?
What are you most proud of?
Oh man, I mean, in this day and age, I would say nothing's truly original. Every time I created something I thought was kind of original, I found that it existed in some way that was never publicized.
But you got to claim it.
But it was still your creation to you, right? Like you still had to invent it for yourself.
Back in the day, before the internet was popular, when I was bartending, I had there was a cocktail on the menu named Evan's Chocolate Martini that was a coffee and chocolate martini that was very alcohol focused, with just hints of the chocolate and the coffee. And now I feel like you can get that at every breakfast buffet place ever, some version of that. But I was way ahead of my time, and that was 15 years ago.
Awesome. Yeah, if we when we do, and we will do for the next mixology, we will have you on, and you'll have to send us the recipes for what we're going to drink.
They're in the book. The first page of each one is the recipe for the cocktail.
Perfect. Well, for the new one though, you'll have to send us those pages, I guess, and we'll have to read them in advance. But yeah, once we find them, me and Dallas will both attempt to mix those drinks. We will probably not be as skilled as you on it, but it's a recipe. It should
maybe we'll have you walk us through the process.
Hard to mess up too bad, I hope.
The next ones it's Paloma and Manhattan are the next two cocktails.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Nice. I've never had a Paloma before.
I've had a Paloma.
Oh, they're so good.
Solid.
Paloma is one of those ones where there's very regional differences in it, because like it originated in Mexico and it was just fresca with replacing some of the ingredients of a margarita, but it has since become a lot more craft focused, where you come up with like fresh grapefruit and some other stuff to balance the loss of the soda water. We could talk about that next time when we're making them.
We'll talk about that though. One last question for you, just on the mixology thing, because I'm I've been curious since the first one. How do you pick the cocktail first and figure out the story? Do you pick the story and then figure out the cocktail? Like, how does that come about in your head?
Yeah, to me, it has to be a cocktail that has interesting origins / history. Like, obviously, every one of those cocktails has been around for almost 100 years. So there's something in my life, I've come across it and talked to some old bartender about it, or learned something related to it that made me interested in it. Not to mention it's a delicious cocktail. So it's a combination of spending years sitting in dimly lit cocktail bars thinking about these things, and just having something interesting to put with the cocktail from a story standpoint.
Cool.
Good stuff.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to that one because I want to drink a Paloma. I'm going to wait for that episode though. I'm going to do my first Paloma that day. I'm not going to experiment until that moment, but all right, Evan, thank you so much for doing this. Thanks for joining us.
Good stuff.
We will, I'll chapter this, put all the links right below the video, and I'll shout this out on social media as soon as that's ready, probably in another day. And otherwise, guys, TOXX, once again, it's on Kickstarter, TOXX Volume 1.
We have 15 days left,
until the 15th.
Until the 15th,
Or no, until the 22nd.
No,
I'm sorry, you're right. 15 days until the 22nd. Technically, the morning of the 23rd, but let's call it the 22nd to get people not to wait till the last freaking moment.
That's right.
Possible.
That's right.
So go do that, guys. And Evan, we will see you, I'm sure, soon in the future. And I will also.
Thanks so much.
I'm glad I read TOXX. There is more Ignis Quadrant coming, correct, as well?
Oh, I have 2 more issues done. I'm very excited. That'll always be my favorite comic love. I'll make Ignis Quadrant until I die.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Looking forward to that as well. All right, guys. One last little Facebook user. Great interview, lads. Glad I finally got to watch this one. Nice to see your face again, Dallas. Facebook user, let us know who you are. Although I'll go to Facebook and find out.
Dallas is old friend Facebook user.
Exactly. All of our old friend Facebook user, technically.
Yeah, right.
We all have at least one, probably, I hope.
Right.
If we're on Facebook at all. Dallas is not, so he doesn't have any old
Facebook
friends.
Probably Tom from MySpace disguised as a Facebook user.
I was just asking someone about Tom from MySpace, actually.
Nice.
All right. Take care, guys.
All right, guys.
We will see you again another day. We are ending the live stream.